Please welcome Joel Coen, Ethan Coen, Oscar Isaac, and John Goodman. Everybody in the audience who knows who Junior Brown is, raise your hand. This is a quiz from Ethan.
A few people.
Yeah, Brad Balfour in the front. Okay. I wanted to start the ball rolling with a question about music and to find out at what point you guys arrived at the songs that are in the film, when they started working on them with T-Bone Burnett.
Well, a couple, I can't even remember which, but maybe a couple of the songs were specified in the script. We kind of thought as we were writing of a couple of them, what might go into a couple of places, but certainly not most of them. And T-Bone was the first person we sent the script to when we were finished with it, so that conversation just started basically as soon as we were done with the script and knew we were going to do the movie.
We were thinking specifically about Dave Van Rock when we were thinking about the script and writing the script. So a lot of the songs in the movie are sort of songs that he sang or associated with him, or songs he recorded. So those songs, some of those songs were sort of there from the beginning. And then,
really just
it's
Dink
like
song.
we always do. Yeah,
Dink and
Dink
Hang Me.
song and
Those
Hang
were the
Me,
two,
and,
I
but
remember.
yeah. But then it was sort of like we always do with T-Bone. We kind of, all right, there's this part in the story, and what's going to happen here.
And then after Oscar was cast, were there any songs that you brought into the conversation, or that?
Yeah, I think Green Rocky Road, the one that I play in the car, that was one. And and then we just kept, the big question for me, because it wasn't in the script, was the song that I play for F. Murray. And that one, there was some time when we weren't sure what it was, and so I was looking at a bunch of different songs as well. And so it was a surprise when that one ended up being the one.
John, you don't sing any songs in the movie. I'm sorry.
I did internally.
Okay.
My interior monologue was scored.
Right there.
Hi, I'd like to ask Joel and Ethan.
Wait for the mic.
You have the mic? Okay. Hi, I'd like to ask Joel and Ethan, is failure more interesting to write about and make a movie about than success with this biography of a fictional song writer, folk singer? And also, how do you pick your subjects? There always seem to be so eclectic.
I'm sorry, what was the second part? How do we
Pick your subject.
Oh. Well, the success movies have been done, haven't they? It's less interesting as sort of from a story point of view, I think. Oh, in fact, I don't even know how we would start to think about that one. How do we pick our subjects?
Yeah, but I hadn't said anything yet. We just talk about whatever. It just comes out of a conversation. It's not like picking a subject implies there's something really specific we're picking, but it's kind of not like that. We talk about whatever. In the case of this movie, a scene, the village, the kind of folk revival, or whatever, and a possible ideas about a character, and it's just a very, very, very vague conversation that gets progressively more concrete.
I haven't read the press kit yet, so I don't know what you're telling me, but I love the film. And I saw that you made a Greek adaptation from the Odyssey. And instead of the dog, you put the cat, Ulysses. He recognizes him. And so it's gorgeous. I mean, you make it, at the very end, that is the conscience, because I couldn't understand the beginning with the cruelty and all that. But what I love it. I just was wondering if John Goodman was a siren or what was going on there. Okay? Thank you.
I thought that was understood. I must work harder.
John's last couple of movies with us have been the Homeric things. Yeah, right. We kind of thought about it as an odyssey in which the main character doesn't go anywhere.
Wait for the mic. It's on its way. Right here.
Hi, thank you. Even though Dylan only gets a little bit at the end, so much of the movie in our mind is everything before Dylan and after Dylan. And I was wondering, given so many of the traditional songs versus Dylan, who wrote his own material, could you comment about the whole cultural phenomenon, and in the case of poor Llewyn, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, he's got a lot to compete with now. What about the copying other people versus your own original material? Could you talk about that contrast in the movie?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big subject, and it sort of goes to the heart of what folk music is in a way, and also it was, the cultural moment that you're talking about was sort of specifically on our mind when we were thinking about the story, because we wanted to do something that was set in the scene before Dylan showed up specifically. We weren't that interested in the period. I mean, he came onto that scene and he sort of changed it, and he was such a transformative figure. And people know more about that, and it seemed less interesting to us. But you're right. It's there's a big difference between. There were people obviously writing songs and singing them before Bob Dylan showed up, but the era of the sort of singer-songwriter there was sort of a pivot that was happening right around there in terms of interpreters of traditional folk music and people who were writing their own stuff, and Dylan was sort of one of the big catalysts of that. And there was, as has also been noted, there was a sort of obsession with a certain kind of authenticity in quotation marks and having to do with traditional music that the people involved in this early folk revival were very concerned with. And that had sometimes, both interesting and sort of ironic repercussions, or there were interesting and ironic aspects to that. That was also something that was interesting to us. But as I say, we were thinking about that. It's a big, big subject.
Oscar, do you have anything to add to that?
As far as
Well, actually, in terms of what you brought to the character.
well, yeah, I guess the idea of the guy that's trying to be authentic and only plays old songs, but the culture around him, or the scene at least, is moving on from that. And if they're moving on, what is he supposed to do if that's how he feels the most true to himself, I guess, is playing old songs. And it's just interesting because, in a way, these folk musicians were like curators or DJs, they would collect these songs and present them. And then, once you started collecting records, you realize, well, you've got the original there. Why do I need you to sing it to me? So I want to hear new stuff. And then that kind of became the new movement. And then, of course, Dylan came around and synthesized what the beat poets were doing and traditional music and made this new thing, and people got more jazzed about that.
But he did a lot of interpreting himself. I mean, he sang
Yeah,
all
yeah,
older songs
yeah.
too.
During the trek to Chicago, there's a shot where he's sitting at the coffee counter and he's trying to squeeze the the wetness out of his sock, taking it out of his shoe and pressing it. And it's a very powerful image. It really sums up a lot. And I'm wondering, where in the process of creating this picture, where is that image there as you're writing the script? Does it come up when you're writing the script, or is it something you storyboard out? It's so specific and so detailed, and I was just wondering where in the process of making the film that image comes in.
It was in there.
Was it?
It was in there, and there was a little picture too. Yeah. What's cool is every day you get your sides. You get the, all the words you have to say for the day, your lyrics, and then at the back of the sides they have the storyboards printed out, which is a really great way for everybody to kind of understand what's happening, and not everybody does that. But yeah, I do remember the picture of the wet shoe. And it seems like it's just what's a horrible thing that you could have in a diner or in a place that you're stuck in is a cold, wet foot. Man.
I mainly read their scripts for the pictures.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes. For the directors, the atmosphere of the film is pretty bleak, and everyone looks really washed out and gray, and the sky is always gray, except for the one time when he goes to see his father. You get a quick shot of some blue in the sky, and I wanted to ask just if you could talk about like the atmosphere of the film, why, and color choices.
Remember how it was actually a very warm winter, so we were rushing around trying to get a lot of these bleak shots, but there was like leaves coming in the trees, and we actually had to fake a lot of that.
Yeah, right. Spring came really early. It wasn't even last year now,
was
was it?
2 years
It was
ago.
2 years ago. Yeah, so we were kind of fighting the oncoming grain to try to keep the bleakness. Actually, in some of the shots, it's mostly supplied snow, and you can still see. You can see if you're looking, blooming trees where there shouldn't be. But yeah, right. It was that. I don't know. Again, thinking about the scene, the folk scene. You think about New York in the winter. You don't want to see it in the summer when it's green. It's basically, the cover of Freewheelin' Bob Dylan is kind of the look. I mean, that's kind of. That's that look, and the weather is part of that.
Yeah. Wait for the mic. Can you get the mic over here?
Jeez, was the nursing home that had a blue sky? I didn't even remember. We missed a shot on the wrong day.
You missed one.
I remember when you guys were preparing the movie, you discussed that you were thinking about shooting it like black and white, 16 millimeter, kind of like a Pennybaker kind of thing, and I'm wondering how it developed into the visual language you ultimately chose.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was sort of an early idea. I mean, it's very difficult to make black and white movies nowadays, but that aside, we, just from a sort of broader stylistic point of view, when we were sort of sitting down with Bruno Del Bonell, who shot the movie, and trying to figure out all of those things, we found ourselves, starting with that idea, but then as we started to break the script down into specific shots, we realized that so much of what we wanted to do from a shot point of view just didn't lend itself to that. There was a little bit of a residual idea of that in some of the coverage in the club, in the coffee house. The first shot in the movie starts out with a handheld shot, actually. But
Yeah, right. Right. We talked about it. We made that the first shot is very long take because it could afford to be because Oscar was, all the performances were good, but a kind of quietly handheld take, and we thought, all right, we'll do it at the beginning of the movie, and that'll feel vaguely good again when it comes back at the end. But it kind of fell away from the rest of the movie.
you know, we started, you know, thinking, well, we want to follow this cat down the hallway. And it's you can't really do that. I mean, the idea of doing that from a visual point of view, or just sort of how you design the shot, is sort of antithetical to making it look like a Maisel Brothers documentary. It wants to be sort of controlled. So those kinds of things were, that transition wants to feel controlled, you know? So those transitions, I mean, those types of things were starting to kind of push us away from that idea as we sort of started to discuss what the movie was going to look like.
Also, it's kind of connected to the other thing, the kind of slushy, gray New York, kind of not literally monochrome, but kind of desaturated look. It just that seemed to also kind of tug away from that idea, that kind of verite, black and white verite idea.
In the discussion that you guys did with Manola Dargis and A.O. Scott and the Times, you talked about perhaps with your next movie switching to the Alexa. Do you think that that's going to happen? Will this be the last movie you shoot on film?
I don't know. It's possible. I have to say, I'm not wildly enthusiastic about the idea. This movie was shot on film for a number of reasons, but retrospectively, I mean, one of them was that we were working with a DP that we'd only done one short thing with in the past, and Bruno also had not shot anything with a digital camera before. He'd done everything on film. And we thought that was actually, well, while we discussed it, we thought that might be one more sort of complicating factor in a new relationship with the DP that neither of us had, just the one extra step too far. But I am glad that we shot it on film. I mean, it's all like a hybrid thing now because you shoot on film, but of course it all goes into a box, it all goes into a computer and gets heavily manipulated. Still, there is something that looks different between movies that are shot on film, even though they're finished with a DI, than movies that are shot with an Alexa or some other digital camera.
And they're projected as DCPs. Right?
Yes, and even projected as DCPs, yeah. But it's that's what's happening. I mean, it's probable that the next one will be shot digitally.
This is for the Coens and for John. This is your first time working together in quite some time, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about why this was the right role to get back together on, and also the kind of shorthand that you might have having worked together previously so many times.
We just knew that John would understand it. Also, John turned us on to Charles Portis, the novelist who wrote True Grit, but his other novels were contemporary. All his novels have an old gas bag character, kind of like John's character in the movie. So,
John, do you have anything to?
Sir?
Do you have anything to add to the?
I don't know. It's the shorthand part is it's hard to describe, so I won't try. Sorry. Just something we've always fallen into, I think, since Raising Arizona. They asked me to do a take one time while I was driving an automobile, and I said, "Oh, you mean a Spanky take?" They knew what I was talking about. I knew a Spanky from the Little Rascals, so it's those kind of little things that help make the day go ever so faster.
We were also doing a shot once in Barton Fink where John came to the door and was answering the door, and Ethan said to him, "John, could we have a little bit more ropey snot on the next take?" And John said, "I'm your man."
I think it was "I'm your boy," but
like on this one, we asked John to, you have to hit a mark over there. So, okay, John, you Everett Sloan over to that mark. And John knew what we were talking about.
Hi. Your films are always very anchored in a specific time, specific place, and a specific scene. And I was wondering, first off, what appealed to you mostly about the 60s folk scene for this story about a young songwriter? And also if you have any other sort of scenes or times and places that are on your list to find a story to go with that are interesting to you.
Well, you know, the 60s folk scene, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, being specific, having a very specific sort of, it's hard for us to imagine stories abstracted from or divorced from a very specific locale. To imagine a story that can happen, what could happen anywhere. Or just in this generic city or something like that. It's kind of hard for us to get any traction starting anything that way. Why we were thinking specifically here, well, let's do, New York, 1961 during the folk scene. I don't know. I mean, we've listened to a lot of the music and we were interested. We'd read a number of books, including a memoir that was sort of written by Dave Van Ronk about that period that had got us thinking about it. I mean, that was one of the things that stimulated it.
It's kind of, I don't know what got it right. I was thinking about the scene itself, maybe that got us going, but then there's this character who seems to fit in that scene in as much as his concerns are his tortured relationship to success and the whole sort of idea of, it's kind of things you've asked about, making new crap out of the old crap. Those are both things that were concerns of characters in that scene, So not wanting to sell out, but wanting to perform and reach people, and also the authenticity thing of. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty vague, but
concise.
Not informative, but compact.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up today. I want to thank everybody for coming, and thank you, Joel, Ethan, Oscar, John.